An unforgettable night for the St. Louis Cardinals in the desert. That's probably putting it politely.
Is
The
that what
final
it is?
score of game one of the second half, Diamondbacks 7, Cardinals 3. It felt even worse than that. They salvaged a few runs in the ninth inning, but overall a very forgettable start to half number two, and there had been a lot of anticipation for it. He is Brenden Schaeffer. I am Ethan Hannaford, and this is Cards Central Postgame on STL Sports Central. As always, all the content on STL Sports Central is sponsored by DraftKings. The crown is yours. Brenden, not pretty stuff tonight from your Redbirds. We'll get into the details here, but overall, just not the way you want to start it off. You feel like you get some rest, you get some guys healthy. The fans are a little bit excited going, I think, thinking, okay, you have a chance to kind of wipe the slate clean. And boy, it feels mighty dirty very quickly.
Yeah, and like anytime you face a right-hander, you feel like the Cardinals have a better chance because of their struggles this year against lefties. But then, of course, Nolan Gorman gets scratched with the back issue. Lars Nootbaar is on the IL. So you look up and suddenly you've only got 3 left-handed bats in the lineup against a right-handed starter. That's supposed to be the Cardinals' strength and was not the case tonight. They were getting chances. I mean, they were getting opportunities with runners on base. They just could not cash in, like, at all until you got to the ninth inning.
Yeah, you even saw a couple of nice defensive plays made at a couple of points in this game by Arizona, but in large part, Brandon Pfaadt had all of the answers for this Cardinals offense. But the offense, while it was quiet tonight, it felt like they were playing from behind very quickly in this one. Andre Pallante ran into trouble very quickly. Your mustache is looking great, by the way. Just wanted to throw that out there.
Oh, thanks. I appreciate that.
Andre Pallante, not a pretty night for him. His final line score, 4 2/3 innings pitched, 9 hits, 6 runs allowed, 5 of them earned, 2 walks, 3 strikeouts. The action got started pretty quickly. They were able to get out of it in the first, thanks in part to Mason Wynn, who had a web gem up the middle in the first inning. But second inning comes around and a lot of hard contact on Andre Pallante. And the most unfortunate part, Brenden, is that the majority of it came with 2 outs.
Yeah, I mean, you feel like you're close to getting out of some of those situations and just not able to do so. In the chat, I mean, the chat is frustrated with Palante. I know that I saw it on social media, on Twitter, that people are frustrated with Palante. Look, if you're frustrated with Palante and the way that he's performed recently, the way that he's performed all year long, totally understand that. After tonight's game, his ERA balloons up to 4.71, and that's not, as competitive as it needs to be for kind of where he's slotted into this rotation. But guys, I got news, man. He's still probably the 3rd best starter in this rotation right now. So I get it that 60% of the time you're watching a Cardinals game, you're generally going to ask that the starting pitcher be, shot into the moon or whatever, but they're not. It's like this overhaul is not coming. This will be the downfall of the season. Like, people are accurately describing and pointing toward what the problem is going to be when we look up and the Cardinals win 79 games this year at the end of 162. It's going to be that, Palante ended up with an ERA in the mid to high 4s. Michaelis, probably the same story. Fetty, probably the same story until one of those guys are replaced by McGreevy, but McGreevy can't replace all 3 of them. And you just don't have the depth. We've known this kind of since really going back to the offseason in the spring, back when everybody wanted Michaelis punted off a bridge in February. Everybody wanted Fetty traded in February. The reason they couldn't do it is because they don't really have any better options that are major league ready. We could be having a totally different conversation this time next year, but they flat out don't have it. If they want to work some miracles before July 31st and pick up 1 or 2 controllable starting pitchers, I think everybody here would be all for that. Do we realistically expect it though? Not really. It would require some real creativity to pull off those types of trades. And, even if they have the gumption and the willingness to do it, to execute it is even more of a challenge. So I just don't think it's going to look all that different. You're going to get McGreevy. I'm telling you, McGreevy's going to start a lot of games between now and the end of the season for the Cardinals. But beyond that, man, they're just going to have to kind of function with what they've got. Even guys like Tekoa Roby that you're excited about. Don't know how many people noticed it, but he's on the injured list now in AAA. Like even the guys that you would say, oh, Brenden, it wouldn't be rushing pitcher XYZ because he's doing well recently in AAA. He's hurt. I mean, they do not have the ready-made depth right now. So short of making a transformational trade at the deadline where they're not giving up prospects, because nobody's trading these prospects, nobody's trading the big name guys like a Weatherholt or any of the pitchers that are down there, nor would we advocate for it. But short of doing something crazy like that, you're not getting the significant pitching overhaul that I think the Cardinals are the fans are wanting. And frankly, they're right to want it because this team's not going to be a playoff caliber team with the starting pitching performing like we have seen it perform in recent weeks. It's just not going to hold up. Something's got to give. And short of just being lucky and having all these guys who are kind of trending in the wrong direction magically turn things around between now and the end of the season, I just don't know how this team ends up in the playoffs right now. It's hard for me to envision it and wrap my head around it with what we are seeing over the last few weeks.
Especially after nights like this, right? When it just feels like they're so out of it against a Diamondbacks team that is 3 games under 500 and is very banged up right now and has nothing going in the right direction for them either. So it feels like this is a series that you look at and you're saying, okay, this is one where we have to take advantage of and get off to a hot start. The problem is you felt that about Washington, and they did that to a certain extent against Washington. I mean, they won. It wasn't pretty, but winning is winning. They couldn't do that against Atlanta, and it feels like it's a continued opportunity. When you looked at this stretch, you said, okay, these are games that are winnable leading up to the deadline. You have to find ways to win them, and the Cardinals aren't doing so right now. Chewy had an interesting comment here a few minutes ago that I put up a moment ago, but I want to put back up. He said, Palante is so 50-50. We've talked about this a little bit, but it is really startling when you look at his numbers, Brenden, and you go back through the game-by-game start, how hot cold he is. This is a guy that in his last 2 outings has allowed 11 earned runs in 10 2/3 innings. And prior to that, in his last, in his 3 starts prior to that, which was 12-18 innings, he allowed, 2 earned runs. And it goes beyond that, right? And so much of it, he's not going to be a guy that is going to get you high strikeout numbers. He's just not. He's going to get you 2, 3, 4 strikeouts an outing. That's just where he's going to sit. He's going to be leaning on, he's a contact heavy guy. And unfortunately, even when you have a defense as good as the Cardinals, at best, I don't want to say at best, but even when they're executing to just about as good as they can, you're still going to run into nights like this. Now, has Andre Pallante been executing his best these last couple outings? No, tonight was not his best. The problem for him consistently, in my opinion, Brenden, I want to hear your thoughts on this as well, when he hasn't looked sharp and has gotten hit around a lot, is when he's not able to locate his breaking stuff, his slider and his knuckle curve very well, and it makes him very one-dimensional with the usage of the sinker and the four-seam. And tonight, especially early in the game, he was not able to locate that knuckle curve. It was wild. And when he was able to, it was a lollipop. It felt like right in the heart of the zone where guys are licking their lips. And unfortunately, at this level, you just can't get away with that. It's been a consistent pattern for him when he has struggled, that he becomes really one-dimensional. And unfortunately, it's hurt this year. It's hurt the quality of his sinker as well, because you're able to predict it a little bit more. I don't think it's much of a coincidence that pitch has seen some struggles more so this year than it did last year as well. I think it has a lot to do with the secondary stuff. And until he is able to consistently locate those breaking pitches, I think he's going to continue to have this inconsistency where you're not sure which Andre Pallante you're going to get.
Yeah, and I think 50-50 is a good description. I think you identified really well what's going on with him. And, there are limitations for all the guys in this rotation. I know that people want, well, maybe not all the guys, but 3 of them for sure. And you can make a case that, Liberatore is going to have an interesting time trying to get through the rest of the season, just in terms of, the workload and the innings that he will have thrown compared to recent years. They're going to try to be careful with him. I think it makes sense to wait until the second series back from the All-Star break to get him involved. But there's frustration with that because, he's your second best starter. but this is just the nature of the beast. Like, this is why we're seeing why the win total projected in Vegas before the year was 76.5, because to think that the starting pitching was going to last for 6 months at a 85 to 90 win clip like the Cardinals had been pacing for was just wishful thinking. It was nice while it lasted, but right now you're seeing the severe limitations of a rotation that the plan coming in was kind of, let's see what we've got because we're paying these guys, or these guys are, the closest thing to major league ready that we have. And you'll learn about guys like Palante and Liberatore and what you're going to potentially be able to expect from them in a future season when you are ready to maybe put your best foot forward and you are ready to add to the roster in the winter and like actively try to build the best roster you can. They didn't do that this offseason. We knew that. And yet there's enough talent on the team that they're kind of in the mix, despite the fact that they didn't really try from a front office level over the winter. But the problem is they just don't have enough. But this comment here, I get it. People want to see Michael McGreevy. But again, I think we run the risk of having the same thing. And I know what you're laughing at. It's good. We run the risk of having the same thing happen that has happened with Thomas Saggese, who's been sent back to AAA. He came up, people clamored for him and said, oh, it's so obvious that he should be up instead of all these other guys. Thomas Saggese, his bat may settle in as more of a utility guy at the big league level. I don't know that he's going to ever show up and be the savior for an offense. Clearly, he wasn't ready to be even a capable, solid mid-level contributor. McGreevy has given up 14 earned runs over his past 8 innings at Memphis across 2 starts, as King's Echo mentioned. So I'm not trying to dog on McGreevy, but I've continued to try to pump the brakes on it for people who think he's going to show up and be an ace. Mm-hmm. He's going to show up and be Palante and have very similar limitations to what Palante has. He's going to have really good outings when he's got his arsenal working, when he's attacking, when he's making sure he's avoiding walks and free base runners. And he's going to have his starts where, because he's more pitch to contact oriented, he's going to struggle. McGreevy's going to come up and have an ERA around 4. And that's okay. That's kind of like your number 3 in a rotation that, you're looking at the Cardinals and saying, what's their path to victory? What's their path to 88 wins? It's not a rotation that's top 10 in baseball. It's a rotation that's top 18 in baseball, and it finds a way to have a top 10 offense with some of the best defense behind them in the game and taking advantages on the bases and doing the little things well and having a good, capable bullpen. Like, if you're going to carve out a path for this Cardinals team to get to 87, 88 wins in a wild card, it's all those things. And right now we're seeing that rotation that was comfortably in that top 15 to 18, and it's starting to slide the other direction. I just want to point it out because we're quick to criticize. We're quick to have the answers. And then we see sometimes what the answer looks like, and it doesn't save the day. In a couple days, we'll be watching Miles Michaelis pitch. And if he sucks out there, everybody's going to say, how could they run Miles Michaelis out there again? I get it, but this was the foundation that was laid for a season that wasn't designed at its core to be overly successful. They were fortunate to have been so successful early, but you're getting pitching regression and position player injuries at the same time. This has a chance to go off the rails quick, and there may be some Cardinals fans, Ethan, out there who don't mind that, because if you go lose 7 of your next 10, you have to sell everybody. Yeah. Maton, Helsley, if Matz has value, you got to do it at that point. But I know that there are those who hope, come on, guys, just keep holding serve, be close, be in the mix, and let John Mozeliak go out and get a piece or two. Not cost prohibitive. You're not trading big prospects to do it, but make little moves like we're used to seeing and see what you've got. There's a winnable schedule between now and the deadline. But, I mean, if you get rocked by the Diamondbacks and don't take full advantage of teams like the Rockies, very quickly we're going to have a different conversation. And, look, they're still above 500, but under the hood, there is a lot of reason to be skeptical right now because of that regression for the rotation and the fact that you are banged up when it comes to those position players that you're supposed to be counting on.
He is Brenden Schaeffer. I am Ethan Hannaford. This is the Cards Central Postgame show following a 7-3 loss for St. Louis against the Arizona Diamondbacks. As always, Cards Central Postgame on STL Sports Central is presented by DraftKings. Download the DraftKings Pick 6 app now and use the code STL Sports. That's code STL Sports, STL Sports for new customers to play. $5, get $50 in Pick 6 credits. Better payouts, bigger wins, only with Pick 6 from DraftKings. The crown is yours.
Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org in Connecticut. Must be 18 and over. Age and eligibility restrictions vary by jurisdiction. Pick 6 not available everywhere, including New York and Ontario. Void where prohibited. One per new customer. Bonus awarded as non-withdrawable Pick 6 credits that expire in 14 days. Limited time offer. See terms at pick6.draftkings.com/promos.
Cardinals drop the first game of the second half against the Arizona Diamondbacks, 7-3, the final score. He's Brenden Schaeffer. I am Ethan Hannaford. This is Cards Central Post Game. Continuing the conversation we were having just a moment ago, to play the devil's advocate, right? If the Cardinals are able to put some wins together here at in the final few games here before the deadline, and you do convince Mozeliak that the team is worth investing something in, right? And this isn't to say that they will or that they should do that, even if they are to win a handful of games here, right? I think that there is a world in which it does make sense, even if you're a fan and you're saying this team is not worth investing in because they're not going to be a World Series contender. I mean, the odds of the Cardinals being a World Series contender are they gotta be pretty dang low right now, right? I mean, they're not zero, but they're pretty dang low. What I will say though, and what we've seen in the past, right, is that when a team gets a spark, right, and if this Cards team is able to catch fire and they are able to find some of the spark in which they had earlier in the season, not saying that it's just magically going to happen again. There are issues going on, right? But if you are able to do that, what that could do for some of these young guys that haven't experienced a consistent stretch of winning, right, to get them to the postseason, what that could do for you long term. I mean, it's a completely different situation, right? But the one that comes to mind, and fans, don't get on me for this comparison, it is extremely loose, right? But even the St. Louis Blues, a team, right, that you thought they were going to sell at the deadline. They had a lot of young talent, and a lot of people were saying, you should be selling with this team. They didn't. They gave it a chance. And they went on a run, and I imagine that for a lot of that young talent, that spark and getting a taste of it is going to go a long way. Now, the Cardinals are in a very different spot right now, in the sense of right now it feels like everything is falling apart, right? But this is where the devil's advocate comes in. If the Cardinals are to, magically turn things around, they get healthy quickly, and the starting pitching starts to move back in the right direction, meaning that Palante would have to improve, Michaelis would have to get back to early season form, then maybe you see the bright side of trying to go for it and seeing what kind of benefit could that provide. The question, right, is looking at the two sides and saying, what makes more sense? Going for it and giving a shot and seeing if you could provide a little bit of a spark for your young guys going into the upcoming years so they know what they're playing for? Because, yes, you know what you're playing for, but I think it's a whole different level when you get to experience a taste of it. That, or continuing to make sure that this pool of prospects is a little bit deeper, because while it has improved a little bit in the last couple of years, it's still not very deep. It's still probably, I would say, not in the top half of Major League Baseball. So there still is work to make sure that you're taking care of it for your future as you are working to get younger. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that, Brenden, but I think it's something that hasn't been mentioned much. And there is a world, right, where that could still end up being, I think, something to consider.
Yeah, but for me, like with the Blues, it felt like they had turned a corner even before the deadline, which was like a stagnant deadline.
Why it's a loose comparison?
No, I hear you, but it's like it's worthy for us to kind of bring that up and think about, okay, is that something that could benefit the Cardinals? And in their case, they lost Colton Parayko shortly before the deadline, but by being stagnant, that was kind of investing and infusing a little bit of life into a team that the rumors were, hey, they might tear you down. In the Cardinals case, though, like think about the names we're talking about. We're talking about Helsley, where every time he comes into a game anyway, fans are sort of bracing themselves for a base runner inning and holding on for dear life. I think they're a little harsh on him, but it's true. He's not been nearly as effective this year. You're talking about Maton, who has been pretty good, maybe to the point where he has more trade value than you might have expected.
Sure.
Capitalize on that. If you're trading a guy at the height of his value, I would be okay with that because you're talking about a fickle position group anyway. Bullpen guys, man, 1 year they're good, 1 year they're not as good. 1 month they're good, 1 month they lose it. So because specifically we'd be talking about bullpen guys to move on from, and it's short-term assets that you don't have under team control beyond this year, I would actually be okay with doing it, selling those guys. I want Ryan Helsley to be a Cardinal next year, but he's not going to be. I'm just telling you, he's not going to be re-signed. It will not happen. Knowing that is bona fide to be the case, trade him and get something for him, I would be okay with it because guess what? We've seen stranger things happen where teams will sell. The Tigers last year, a good example. Now, they had a much stronger young core that was ready to emerge than what the Cardinals currently have, I think, but they found a way to still find their way into the playoffs last year after trading at the deadline guys like Jack Flaherty and others. They got worse, but they basically said, hey, runway to some young players, take those spots and see what you can do. And there's no expectation because we did sell off, but whatever happens, happens. Well, they made the playoffs doing that. There's a realm in which you trade Maton Helsley and then you call up, Graceffo and maybe, call him into like an 8th, 9th inning role. And then maybe Granillo gets healthy and you bring him in, or, you bring back Chris Roycroft with no expectations for what it would look like, or Ryan Fernandez with no expectations for it to be successful. But, you bank some prospects and you get more runway for those guys to find out who should be part of your bullpen mix the next year. It's getting to where like the Cubs are like 7.5 games up on you. It's starting to get bleak. I'm all in on going, if this is too much to overcome, this notion of, man, you're regressing in the rotation and your offense, like Lars Nootbaar, hasn't held up healthy. So you're having to IL him right now. If they just don't have the horses, I'm okay with like trading small and then from there figuring out a way to, bring it backfill from Memphis with the bullpen guys, and maybe somebody steps up and surprises you. And McGreevy comes up with that as well. Trade away Fetty or Michaelis, whichever one you can get rid of, and bring McGreevy into that spot. Either he sinks or swims, but he does it for 10, 12 starts the rest of the year, and you get to see and then therefore can anticipate what you feel about it for next year. I want you to respond to that, but first, I want to take a moment to talk directly to Brenden here. Let me know specifically what I am not calling accurately about this, because I don't think I've said one false word in this podcast. Brenden, that's for you. Let me know. Let's be specific, because I won't hide from anything, but I always try to provide context and be fair. So you let me know that. Jeremy's in the chat. Same thing, Jeremy. Let me know what it is that we're not calling out that should be, because I think sometimes people say, oh, I'm tired of the excuses. No, I'm not making excuses for the Cardinals. I'm telling you why it's not going the way that you want it to be going. And it's not surprising. When you look, a lot of y'all called it out before the season. Hey, this rotation on paper doesn't look great. No, it doesn't. If it can find a way to be 15th in the league, though, they've got a chance. And for the first half of the year, they were. Now we're seeing regression in a major way from 3 guys. Michaelis bounced back in his last start, but can you expect that to continue? Maybe not. So that's what I just don't always understand it when those types of comments are made. But Ethan, I want your general thoughts on a soft sell of guys like Maton Helsley, and then you can bring in young pitchers to take the spot come what may. And then I want your thought on this from Seth. Should they even take it a step further than that? With guys like Donovan, and I'll bring up another name, Lars Nootbaar, they're both 2 years away from free agency after this year. They both were taken to arbitration by the team in the offseason. That tells you, like, are these guys that are going to be re-signed? Should they be re-signed? I feel Donovan is clearly someone that should be extended long-term. But what do you think about the 2 layers of a potential sell-off? Would you consider selling the short-term assets, bringing up young pitchers to replace those bullpen guys, and hoping for the best because stranger things have happened? Would you take it an additional step and say, man, it might be the best time to capitalize on somebody's trade value like a Donovan? Can't really do it with Nootbaar if he's not healthy. But is that applicable at all if the Cardinals aren't going to re-sign these guys anyway? Teams will pay for guys with multiple years of team control, premium prospects, more so than they would rentals. Your thoughts, Ethan, on that kind of general two-tiered philosophy of a potential sell at the deadline?
If it was up to me, the Cardinal, I would be selling those bullpen pieces on expiring contracts. This at this deadline, I believe that needs to happen. Where it gets difficult, right? And what you have to consider is this this unique spot that the front office is in, and that Heimblum is going to be taking over come the offseason, right? We don't know how Heimblum views Lars Nootbaar compared to how John Mozeliak views Lars Nootbaar, how Brendan Donovan is viewed by Mo compared to Bloom. We don't know. And here's the thing, like, are those two working together on a lot of this? I have to imagine that they are. But at the end of the day, John Mozeliak is still the one with the final say. So until the day that Chaim Bloom has that final say, I don't know if you're going to be able to come to an agreement on a big trade. And Lars Nootbaar would be a big trade. Involving him in something would be considered big, I think. So Brendan Donovan, absolutely not. Brendan Donovan is getting an extension this offseason. If it's up to me, I would be really surprised if Brendan Donovan doesn't get an extension.
You think Chaim Bloom will do it, though? This
yes,
ownership group, Chaim Bloom will do it?
Yes, I do. I think if I am Chaim Bloom, it is the number one thing on my offseason list of things to get done is to extend Brendan Donovan. And if you don't, then in my opinion, it's a bad start. It is a bad start to a new group running things in the front office. That has to be the top thing. This guy just screams St. Louis Cardinal in every single way possible. He is coming off of what has been up to this point an excellent season on the field, offensively, defensively. You have to extend Brendan Donovan. At some point, you cannot just continue to have these guys that are going to be, well, what are they going to do once free agency comes? Stick your trust in a guy that has proven his worth to the club, both on and off the field. And Brendan Donovan has done that. So I am not trading Donovan. And I think, too, it's hard to remember it in times like this, but they have found young pieces that they are excited about and they think that they can build around. I know it's rough right now because we're in the murk of it, but I think that still the Cardinals are closer to being a competitor and in the mix for the division than people think. I'm not talking about this year. I'm talking about for years to come. They have some pieces that are not far away. They have some guys that this year they have figured out who they like, perhaps who they don't like as well. Use it once the offseason comes. Figure out if once the offseason comes, hopefully they use they move on from some of that surplus that they have, bring in some pieces that are more of need, and then you have a little bit more of a balanced roster. This is the year where it makes sense to do that. John Mozeliak is out the door come the end of this season. You have a new guy coming in. Let's hope that this is the year where that gets done and we're talking about a team that is legitimately in the mix for the division, and you're not going in saying that the point of this year is to figure out what you have, that you're looking at and you're saying 2026, the goal's to win.
Yeah, I'm skeptical. Can I play the devil's advocate to points that I agree with from you?
Please do.
And I'm pointing out this comment from Damian. I told Ethan before we went on the air that last night I left. So I was All-Star Week, SEC Media Days, 6 hours of sleep each night. And then last night drove back home, went to bed at 6 a.m. and woke up at 1 p.m. So I am a little out of it. I asked Ethan if he could take the lead tonight, and he was gracious enough to do that. But I want to play devil's advocate to points that Ethan was making that I agree with about Brendan Donovan. I would build around Brendan Donovan if I were the St. Louis Cardinals as well. I wonder how close they are teetering toward an era of, if this team is an 86 or 87 win team, you go, the performances of these guys are enough that we're probably closer than you think to really contending. Let's keep a core. Let's establish it with a few early extensions, and then let's make some additions to make this thing really sing. But if the Cardinals start to crater and like the pitching regression is so evident and the lack of depth below, like ready-made depth in 2026, because I am not convinced that the likes of Quinn Matthews and Tekoa Roby, and certainly not Tink Hence, who just cannot stay healthy. He's on the IL too. And name some other prospects, Cooper Jerpy. Like, I know people are excited about
I do agree with that. I do agree.
That's my problem, is like, that's where I can't get on board with 2026 is time to win. I would love for it to be. I don't think realistically the Cardinals are going to be ready to be that aggressive in light of their crop of pitchers that are on the way aren't going to be as ready as we want them to be by spring of 2026.
That's right. That's where the surplus comes in, though, right? That's where the surplus hopefully can net you a young, ideally, right, a semi-young with a couple of years of control starter that you can put into that group, netted with, I don't know if you would mix him with kind of the Libertor, hopefully the Libertor tier, right? That's kind of what you hope that you're able to add from a couple of these guys. We know that there is interest in some of these guys around the league.
Who are you moving, though? Like, give me, because there's no right or wrong answer to this, but I want to map this out because I think it's interesting.
We're about to really dive into it here.
Who are the, like, give me 5 names. You're like, from that group, you're going to trade a couple of these guys to get the pitching that we're talking about, whether that's in July or in November.
I don't know if any of these guys are getting traded in July, so I'm gonna.
Right.
I'll speak for November here. I think that Lars Nootbaar would make sense to get traded. I know he's at a low right now as far as the offensive numbers come in. I would ideally, he has a good second half, and that builds a little bit more trust in teams that they're looking more so at the grand product of what he's been able to provide in the 4 seasons when he's been healthy.
Yeah.
So Lars Nootbaar is a guy that I'm looking at.
If he's got good value, because you want to be trading guys that have real value to get something good back.
Yes.
So we're not saying trade Nootbaar because he stinks, like half the chat might believe, like Joe Roderick might believe. You do it because he has 2 years of team control remaining, is attractive because of that, and has a unique skill set. He really does. But the Cardinals haven't seen him put it together to an extent that I think they would be ready to extend him. And if you're not ready to extend him by November, argument to be made that would be the time to move him because you've still got 2 years of control that you can float to other teams who will then be willing to give up more in return because he's not a rental. So continue. That's one name that I agree with.
Nootbaar is number one. This next one, I'm still kind of processing out. This is something that I've begun to have these conversations in my mind, but I haven't really fully processed them out yet. So give me some grace here, guys. Next, as of now, I'm thinking Nolan Gorman. And my thought is that you have a guy in J.J. Weatherholt who's going to be a middle infield guy. Could he play anywhere? Probably, right? But it's not like there's already plenty of log jams in the outfield too. I don't know where you're going to fit in Nolan Gorman if Ivan Herrera is going to be a DH style guy, unless they convince Wilson Contreras or Nolan Arenado to get shipped off somewhere, which I'm not very optimistic of that happening. Then someone has to go.
I actually don't want to move Contreras because
I wouldn't want to either. I wouldn't want to either, right? But if Contreras goes, then it leaves a path for Gorman to stay, and I don't think Contreras is going. So that's why I say Gorman, because it's a left-handed guy. You have a lot of lefties. He's that similar style to where he plays second base. He can play third, but if Arenado's there, he's not going to play there. And besides that, he's a DH. So what do you do with him? He has looked a lot better at the plate in large part. I would argue the last, month compared to what he did the first 6 weeks of the year. He's starting to get back into the style of the player that you expect him to be. And I think that his value is probably creeping back up league-wide. If he can continue that for the remainder of the season, I think that he could probably bring you something in. This next guy is not going to net you that, but could be an attachment piece. I don't see where you're going to be able to keep Thomas Saggese on this roster and him not be a guy that's going to be consistently doing anything for you. Maybe you could find room for him as a bench bat potentially. Yeah, I like him in that role, but I don't know if there's going to be room for him even as that.
I don't think they trade him because A, I don't think he has a lot of value, and B,
I think he has more value now where he's kind of in the mix. You could still argue he's a prospect compared to if he sticks in this kind of back and forth for another year. Yeah, then his value, I think, continues to deplete.
I think you might already have gotten to the point where teams are like, yeah, he's probably a bench utility guy with a decent big league career ahead of him, but not somebody that you're paying up to acquire. And again, I don't think the front office and ownership is going to be in a mode just yet to really spend up on a roster. Saggese is cheap. He's major league minimum and can do a few different things. I don't know that you're going to get a lot out of him, but I think you'll get more out of him on the roster or like there's the potential for that. But you're right. Like they wouldn't cling tightly to him if they were making the right deal and another team felt he had to be involved. But like Nootbaar and Gorman, I think is more the ilk that we're talking about, because it's looking down the road and saying there's not infinite years of control, but these are two players that have a major league track record. Gorman has done well to rebuild his value, but I don't know if it's happened to the point where like the Cardinals are now convinced that they need him on the team next year.
Yeah.
It's just going to depend on what other teams want. I think Nootbaar is the guy you have an easier chance to get something for compared to Gorman. But like those guys are names that are in the mix. The deal, though, is if you're really wanting to get a difference-making player, they will be having to ask the question of like I said with Nootbaar, if they're not ready to extend him, maybe you do consider what the market for him is via trade, especially if you're getting calls. If you're not having to call about Nootbaar, other teams, but you're getting the calls, that tells you that there might be good timing to do this. Get a young pitching prospect, get a, even if it's a pitcher that has had a lot of promise, but he's not quite made it work yet. Maybe you get a guy like that in a package. But the comment we got about Donovan, it's the same thing. They have to extend him this winter, and if they don't, you are talking about a guy that probably could be traded at the height of his value. I think Donovan will continue to be the player he's been this year, an all-star player. But again, if they're not going to extend him like we both agree they should, that's better asset management to trade a guy at his peak rather than, trade a guy like Nootbaar where he's not really peaking right now. You can't predict the future. So sometimes stuff happens where you miss the best window to move a guy. But Donovan, I don't think his production is going to go down, but his team control will go down with each passing month over the next 2 calendar years. I would be extending Donovan as well. They messed up not doing it in the offseason this past year. They didn't do it because of where the organization was from a financial standpoint. And I also think it was mentioned in our chat, the lockout is looming December 1st of 2026, and it's going to be a big change to the pay structure on the other side of that. And so could DeWitt, who is as influential and as in the know as you can be as an owner when it comes to, being connected with MLB and knowing what's going on, could DeWitt just be kind of biding his time and saying, look, we're not going to do anything drastic before we get this new CBA ironed out? That's a real possibility in my mind. So all of these are factors. I agree with the names you said with Nootbaar and Gorman. Are there any others? And you mentioned Sajacy. Any others that jump out? Because look, man, I think there's a realm in which guys like Burleson and Herrera are two of your best, they're batting in the top 4 of your lineup next year. But there's also a realm in which, other teams think that they're batting in the top of their lineup because they're good and they don't have a position.
Yeah,
so
Burleson is the one that I'm still processing out. I haven't gotten too deep on that.
I would keep them both.
I probably would too, but
you can't keep them all. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. You can't keep them all. And
they're all the same. Corner, outfield, or DH.
You have it has to filter in some sort of way in 2026. So
Jordan
a lot
Walker,
of questions.
Let me ask you about him. Jordan Walker. Is that a name you
not yet?
Not
yet. No. There's just well, first off, as a right-handed bat, you have to figure it out with him. There hasn't been enough that you've seen from him in 2025 yet to know what he is, and he's still so young. He's the guy that I fear more than any of the others, saying, what if you move on from him and then he just goes off and becomes that perennial all-star somewhere else? Because I still think that he could be a really good baseball player in the majors.
Because you could trade him now probably for a change of scenery pitcher. Like he'd be a change of scenery bat, right? And think about guys like Bobby Miller. I don't know if you could get Bobby Miller for him, but as an example of a type of pitcher where it's like he had prospect hype and now it's not really working out, you could do that. But why would you necessarily trade for the pitching version of Jordan Walker?
Yeah.
Maybe you just say, I'm going down with the ship. If I'm going down with the ship on anyone, and in 3 years he's out of baseball because he just never figured it out, then you say, hey, that's life. Stuff happens. But I would agree with you that Jordan is a guy that I would be terrified to give up on him too early. And you may say, we're going to hold back our organization to the extent that we continue to give him an opportunity, because if it all clicks for Jordan Walker, it will have been worth the wait. You can't make an organizational process to do that with everyone, because if you just cling to your prospects that you thought were good, but you never capitalized on them via trade value. Think about Brett Wallace, right? What if they had clung to Brett Wallace instead of trading him for Matt Holliday? They didn't give a rat's ass what happened to Brett Wallace after they got Matt Holliday for him. But it's one of those deals where you have to plant your flag on certain guys. They may go down with the ship on Jordan Walker. They may trade him this month. I feel like it will sting more if they go the trade route and he pans out for somebody else. But that's not always a reason not to do something and do things out of fear. Sometimes that's what you have to do, is embrace the fear. I do not envy their position on Jordan Walker, but I personally, especially if they're not competing anyway down the stretch this year, you tell Ollie, man, we just got to run him out there and see.
Yep.
Because I know how it looks right now. He did sting a ball to left center and got robbed of extra bases tonight. But then the next at bat, he looked at strike 3 because he was guessing breaking ball, and it was a fastball down
after
the pipe.
chasing one the pitch before. Yep, I completely agree.
His process is all out of whack still.
Yep.
I don't think he is comfortable at the plate. But my goodness, I think it's a little bit of a short-term reactionary decision to trade him this July. If you trade Jordan Walker, you should do it in the offseason. Don't let the current status of your season impact a long-term decision on Jordan Walker, because you shouldn't be selling out for extra 3 wins in 2025 when it comes to that kid. That's just my opinion. And look, if they trade him and we find out who they get, I may have a different reaction.
Sure.
But as a general statement, I would be really careful about it. Even though, if you ask me today, do I think Jordan Walker pans out as a Cardinal? I'm not optimistic that he will, but I want to be very careful about it, because you may get to a point where they drop 8 of their next 10, and we know by July 31 that they're out of it. Okay, Walker plays every game the rest of the year in right field just to see if he can find what we're all looking for from him. That's runway if you're out of it. If you're in it, there's going to be a temptation from Ollie and everybody, understandably, to try to put their winning lineup out there. And right now, Jordan Walker's not in your winning lineup. But there's going to come a point, possibly soon, where you say, we just got to throw out Jordan Walker and see if he sinks or swims, because that's the tantalizing potential is still something that I'm going to be stubborn about giving up on too early.
You heard it right there. Lots of information to break down, and there's going to be a lot more in the coming days, weeks, months. A lot of question marks still for this Cardinals team. Sonny Gray facing off against Ryan Nelson tomorrow. Tomorrow, is that an afternoon game, or it's an evening game tomorrow? I believe. I think it's a night game again. Night game again tomorrow. So we'll have more action for you, as we always do here on STL Sports Central. We look forward to having you join us then. Thank you again for joining us tonight for this late one. This has been Cards Central Postgame on STL Sports Central.